Science is doing nothing more than replicating what it already knows as the technology goes on. What I've got to put notes up that have nothing to do with any project except the sustainability of the something's universal in the scientific enterprise, and that's all these things. Something is fundamental, and every the brief notes that I put up from the very beginning had to do with the universality of science. What is it that is applicable every place, and there's no contextualization having to do with the details of these matters? Now, the Hubble telescope went up today, and this will $1.5 billion, and the news at 6 o'clock this morning, I first heard said it was $1.5 million. Well, they have screws on it that cost that much. See, so, they had no idea. They were up too early. Over the size of the unit. And I have details here that are at the heart of why practicing scientists do not set gentle to certain things that you and I must affirm. But we can't just affirm them and fly in the face without an answer to the whole chronological dating procedure in the scientific enterprise. That can't be done. So, well, the Bible suggests this. The Bible may do that. I didn't say that it didn't, but here's the essence of the foundation of the old earth, or very old earth. And one can't just sight-read King James English in the book of Genesis and think you're going to overthrow the entire interpretive schema of science. Now, I have two classes, one of which specifically will address that, not in this class, but let me show you. The radioactivity, the phenomena which is radioactive half-life, can provide us with a means of measuring the age of objects. Now, if that's true, now you catch because it's over the universality of the scientific enterprise. If this procedure is universal and objects that are testable, can be measured, plus or minus a variable error of accuracy, then what can't be measured, it goes hard to say, oh no, it measures everything else except the age of the Earth or the solar system or something. And we need, first line, this is some of the things, word just came to me today, the president had been talking to some of the people down at Los Alamos, and they're still working on the things that we did a month ago. So anyway, there are people working on this. They're playing hardball. And it won't do just sermonically to dismiss this universal perimeter of science. Now here is a simple, this man is a physicist, MIT physicist, but this, not simple, but journalistic presentation of majoring procedures. And Swimmer, when I was doing serious work, this is the classic work, but it's from 1959. See, it's already 40 years old. But that was the textbook I used in the university in procedures of measurement in science. This is still a valuable book, but it has to be dated because there's a whole lot that's going on here. But I have these in notes of things that I have in the library. But this is a useful book, and you can tell nothing from the title about what it is. And that's like sermons and things. See, there's more work in the title than in the sermon, or more work in the title than in the content. Now here's just an example, carbon-14. I said take it, but you can also leave it. Carbon-14 dating is an isotope in the atmosphere. Now one of the men at Los Alamos, it's one of our brothers, is, they say the world's leading, but you ever take that with a couple of drinks of water, one of the world's leading chemists, atmospheric chemists in the world. He's working on this. So we have to deal with data and not devotional remarks about verses of Scripture. So dating of isotopes in the atmosphere in the past, then you can date artifacts made, now notice, of organic materials like wood, cloth, leather. Now these are all life systems, or have been. I mean, I'm not suggesting pantheism, but they have been life systems. Now, when life systems stop, death then the flow of carbon stops, and the complement of carbon-14 begins to decay. Now, if that procedure holds universally for all the structures in the universe, and from that procedure certain assumptions about the earth, etc., are extrapolated, it'd be odd that the extrapolation about the earth is wrong, but it is plus or minus a variable error. It's correct on everything else. You see what creates this? And this is, we'll talk about that in 2 classes next year. This what? Well, this is why the creationist people, see, don't faze people like this. See, in fact, they don't even laugh at it anymore. They used to just laugh. They said, well, it doesn't even merit laughing, because they've not examined the history of the discipline that creates the problem, and they think that if they bring counterfactual data to some claim that they've overthrown scientific paradigm, and yet they're practicing scientists. So that merely shows you that all practicing scientists do not understand what science is. That's really what that shows. Now, begin to decay without being, now notice, replaced from the atmosphere. You've got to have source of energy, source of heat, source of this. Where is it? Now, the half-life of the isotope is 5,730 years plus or minus. E.g., after this time, this half-life, this would remain, look at this, in 11,460 years, only, notice this, a quarter, and so on until it's gone. Now, Chernobyl was on the news tonight. Maybe you see it. It would take 22,000 years for it to lose its dangerous output. And except myself and maybe 1 or 2 others, there won't be any of us here in 22,000 years. So you see what the procedure is. Now again, it's over the universality. If it can explain life system, trees, life system, plants, animals, then what is the objection to the judgment, the classical plus or minus the variable error of the age of I didn't say that's true. I didn't say it was biblical. See, I don't want you going to bed at night about that, but it's 4.6 billion. And that means they take all the things and average them up and get 4. So none of which has been examined, the age of the earth. But here's where it's coming from. Now, in 4,000 on, look at this, can be fixed in time. Now, if that's true about every living system and systems that have been dead and are no longer alive, it's odd that it breaks down, see, in determining the age of the stars or the age of the solar system or the age of the earth. So if it works on all kinds of things, then they say, hey, maybe you have a religious case to make and you're not really open to the scientific procedure, the universal element in the science. That's really what the issue is. It isn't over, does your uncle have a sermon that overthrows evolution? Or do you have 2 tapes from someplace that liquidated this forever? Now, this is over something else. Now, geologists use a similar technique to date igneous rock. Except that what is obtained is the date. Now notice the date is the end of life because they can trace the decay, see the rate of decay in a carbon. And all life systems have carbon, what? 14. Well, I meant to have carbon, oxygen. Okay? See, all known, that's why you can have the science of chemistry. That's why you can have science, because living systems are made up of these universal elements. See, Japanese life systems aren't made up of something else, and Russian life systems aren't made up of something else, and Americans are made up of something else. That's why there's a science of it. And whoever does science, wherever it's being done, I've harped. See, school's over, been over for months, but I've harped from the beginning about just tracing 1 or 2 points about the universality of it. What escapes the relativism of where it's done or who does it? Now that's still what this is about. So obtain the date when the rock last melted. Now it's heat. That's heat. It's energy, thermodynamics. So this has to do with this kind of thing, like a volcano. You know, it has to be pretty hot to melt rocks. You know, hotter than your oven or your micro oven. Now, that's energy. Don't forget that. Rather than the date, see, when living things died. Now, that's a different thing, different procedure. But it's a dating procedure, dating. And then extrapolation in the past. See, if they can predict all kinds of things, it would be odd if this procedure broke down about the whole thing. You see, it would lose its universal power. So at least we have to know what we're up against. You're going to have the young earth, and you'll write books, and Moody will publish them, and 2 verses of Scripture, and not one mathematical equation, and not one line of evidence, but they're denouncing certain things. Well, you have to have some ground for denunciation, see? The understanding's the first. Now, when a living thing died, now typical isotopes. Bill, you're a resident scientist. What's an isotope? I should have asked. 2 or 3 of you know that, but hopefully all of it. But what is an isotope?
It's an unstable.
Now,
Nucleus is unstable.
all right, it's unstable, which means it'll interact radically with things in its environment. It's unstable. It's not natural. It's not a natural component. It's not in the periodic chart, huh? Partly. Okay. Well, isotope used by geologists together with half-life are potassium-40. Now, the half-life of potassium-40 is 1/3 billion years. So you're going to use those to get a statistical average of the age of systems that contain those elements. Okay? Now that's the essence of that. This is just sermonic oversimplification. Potassium-40, 1.3 billion years, and rubidium, 87, is 47 billion years, 47 billion years. This is half-life. Okay? And uranium-235 is 710 million years. And uranium-238 is 4.5 billion years. Now, all of these are used, date the age of the Earth, which by this method is, now what it is, they use each of these and then do a statistical statement about them.
I didn't know the half-life was that long.
Well, only by computer. Well, it's certainly, empiricism's over and research is over. These are computer and theoretical statements.
They extrapolate?
Extrapolation off of data that they find.
See, the data that they have, if the universe is what? Now, this is very important. If the laws of the universe have always been that way.
So their instruments are fed in, they're theory laden with...
Oh, yeah, you can't make an instrument say, well, what's this? I don't know, I'm just making instruments. No, instruments are already theoretically laden, theory laden instruments. That's correct.
Okay, so but the instruments are, I mean, they're going off this here.
Well, part of it, but see, this is scientific data. This is lab data. Now, you see, at the end, when people say they're an empiricist, see, you understand that these kinds of remarks are not empirical remarks. But you can get C- in epistemology and know empiricism is absurd as an epistemology in the first place. Science isn't empirical. It isn't by experience. Because most people learn false things by experience. Isn't that odd? Every witch doctor in Haiti learns by experience, but it's all wrong. Almost all of it. How do you learn wrong? Because experience is not a guarantee of what you're learning is correct. That's all. It's that simple. Now, these are the tools. See? Geologists among us would know that. Now, the energy, heat, energy, the universality, the heat from the nucleus is this. We're getting close to old Einstein. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Well, what does the speed of light have to do with energy? Well, the Hubble microscope, they're going to find the farther they go out into space, the faster things travel. Faster than what? See, they already have data. Einstein's whole position was the absolute. It's not relativism. Most people misunderstand Einstein's epistemology thing because he has a relativity theory. He's a relativist. You know, that's Saddam. It doesn't actually merit. He's a realist. See, he's not a relativist. So the speed of light, what the new work in the Hubble equipment. If something's faster, they're getting deeper and deeper into the nature of reality, and the universe gets larger and larger and larger and larger, and particles go faster and faster and faster and faster. Well, what would you measure it against? Well, you lose your measure, so you have to get another measure. See, the measure of speed is light. The Michelson-Morley. Okay. Experiment. Well, see, no student should be allowed to graduate undergraduate or seminary without having some of the major ideas in the history of science. They shouldn't be allowed. No one should even want it, let alone should it be allowed. Now, energy from the nucleus equals this. This is Einstein. Following Einstein's famous equations right here. Now, the ultimate source, source, creation, God, you see this? Creation versus evolution. The radioactive heat is the destruction of the small amounts of mass in each radioactive decay. How small is small? Now, other forms are fission, in which two nuclei come together to form a third. Is that generally, that takes heat, doesn't it? Do nuclei generally fuse?
No. What's fission?
No. Now, it's all this about the age of the stars, age of the sun, age of the earth. All these are just statements about how that's done. Now, in the 19th century, the three laws of thermodynamics developed, and the first law says that heat we feel is from energy, and the energy comes from somewhere inside the sun. Can you imagine? A few days ago it was 50 and 27 at night, and it was 83 today. Would you want the heat bill of filling the vast space with 50 plus degrees of increased heat? Worry about it if you won't think about it. Now here's the sun and the earth, of symbolic, 93 million miles away, and you can go outside and get a sunburn. Whatever you think about it scientifically, that must be a powerful source of energy. 93 million miles away, and you can go out and say, isn't this a beautiful day? We're Christians and we're not environmentally determined, but during the winter and when it's rained and chilly, I'm miserable. I'm only happy when the sun is shining. How many people you think told me that today? Of course you would have no way of knowing but 12. They're really on top of it today. But in the wintertime, it sums down. Can you imagine me trying to defend the uniqueness of a Christian position while you're surrounded by people who are denying it? Would you want that job? Just think what it is where they understand what they're doing. Now, amount of energy follows on what? Now watch this. Amount of energy. This is staggering, and it's just one simple little thing running through there. Amount of energy falling on 1 square foot detector, heat detector, would correspond to a flow of a little more than 100 watts, a light bulb. You turn on a 100-watt light bulb. You go blind if you studied by a 100-watt light bulb. Or it may take you, 3 or 4 semesters, but you certainly wouldn't be a junior without being sightless if you looked at a 100-watt light bulb. Now what's it? All upflow on, if all that's flow would flow on the surface of the earth, it obtained an energy. If that much energy fell on every foot of the earth, and the earth's tiny in the universe, it'd be 170 trillion kilowatts. See, you're talking about heat and the earth's atmosphere, see, and damaging it, and the ozone, all that, the earth's created just to keep certain rays that are lethal to life protected. Well, man's economic and business sense to make greedy bucks may destroy that. And who do you think went 350,000 strong to Washington on Earth Day? Christians that believe in creation? Probably not. Don't you think that's odd? See, this past Lord's Day was Earth Day and Immanuel Kant's birthday, and no one asked me about either one of them. But who should have been first on Earth Day? Christians who believe in creation. But I won't even ask you if you had anything to say about creation Sunday. I'm sure you had more important things to do than that, but I couldn't imagine it. Think of this energy, universality, headed for, next time, a few notes on expanding universe. This is over models of the universe. This is cosmology. Now, not models of the earth. You see, if the explanatory power of all this obtains throughout all the systems, why would anybody think it doesn't obtain for an explanation of the age of the earth? See, it obtains for everything else. It just doesn't obtain there because we have something, a vested interest in something. So we better have a generation that understands what the vested interest is. Now, hydrogen, sirs, just watch this simple little thing. This is simple and stable. Simple and stable. In hydrogen, oxygen. See, it's the first one on the periodic chart. Hydrogen serves as fuel in the sun, and there are millions of suns. We just have one. Millions of suns. There are millions of nuclear explosions in the atmosphere every second. But not in ours. In the sun, and I mean the Earth's sun, even though it is consumed at the rate of, what's it, 600 million tons per second. Where does that come from? Well, evolution is going to have a big role to hold here. Now, the nucleus fires ignited on the I don't mean that I believe that, and that this is just a judgment of the scientific enterprise on the basis of it, that these fires in the surface of the sun that consume 600 million tons per second hydrogen started 4.6 billion years ago. And that this process at the extrapolation can continue for another 5 billion. Now, next time, expanding universe, we ought to have some information from the, perhaps before school's out, but you trace it. See, the universe isn't out even when school is out. School being in and out is an arbitrary thing. Things keep going on. And too many, not yourselves, but too many, well, that's over. I'm done with that. I'm done with the Hubble effect, and I'm done with the Hubble telescope because that class is over. Expanding universe, models of the universe, whether you have a steady state, Big Bang, you still have to account and then see if the processes that you can study, what the source of energy in exchanging levels. See, in chemistry, in physics, in astrophysics, nuclear physics, and this is supposed to tell us a lot of things about the universe. And if the universe is large, it simply ought to increase the size of some people's God. And I don't need a little book from the 1950s, your God is too small. I've always believed most churches have an idol rather than God. I've said, if you could get a $300 or $400 Sears and Roebuck telescope, which is a better telescope than Newton created the scientific revolution with, you could have a spiritual revival. People had any idea how vast this universe is and how complex it is, and they're going to get along in it without any help. Can you imagine that? And the larger it is, the more improbable it is. Right?
If they find that this even then light travels fast as you go out into space, what does that do to the whole notion of universality?
Now, on the brink, perhaps, of a paradigmatic shift. Paradigmatic shift is not incremental. It is a break with the system, explanatory system. See, there's incremental, people learn more and more things, but that's not what advances the world. And we're all, in your lives, if Jesus tarries, I'd like to see some of that, but you ought to see it.
That will change the fundamental ground in physics because almost everything in modern physics
Now, see, the brothers, our Christian brothers down in Los Alamos, every day they talk about, now that they've heard the word paradigm, they said they're going to create another paradigm. That's their life's goal, in the name of Jesus, to have the best information of whatever's going on at any level. That's a goal, isn't it? It seems to me, I'm sure it's wrong, that'd be rather exciting. And see what would happen to men's meetings and women's meetings if they had some purpose other than just coming together and eating. That's correct. Yes, Chris.
It's not that, maybe, I guess we can't establish this, but if this whole concept of light moving faster.
No, I didn't say light was moving faster. Light may not be the building block.
Okay, I was just wondering, could that possibly mean that these stars aren't quite as far away as
Well, it has to do with distance. We've talked about that before. So these things, the universality, can you measure distance? What's the distance? See, in classical Greek, the Greek astronomers said the brightest stars were the closest. Oh no, they might not have been at all close. The dimmer stars farther away, no, they might have been older and worn out. See, so all the explanatory set, you can't reach out and touch it. See, you're always building on conceptual tools. But then you have to test it and see if anything goes from the test.
But like don't they triangulate with the speed of light to determine distances?
Oh, you just have to get a new geometry. That's
Yeah.
all. That's what happened with the collapse of the use of Euclidean geometry. See, they just create another one. Lobachevsky and Riemannian. Those aren't just dumb things that come as a result of some weird mathematician has nothing to do but set up in a building thinking of strange things to say to stranger students.
Yeah.
No, they're about trying to deal with what they're coming up against in the world. So they're running out of paradigm to explain the new data. Golly, that should be exciting. And I'm not encouraging you to be excited. I just said somebody at least ought to be excited for us collectively. Quickly, these 5 things again, just quickly. In the 19th century, as a result of the development in the physical sciences, don't ever forget the physical sciences, the hard sciences, are the sciences where the method. Then everybody from office worker to daily vacation Bible school artist does scientific work. German commentaries are scientific, but I don't have any idea what they mean by that if I don't know what science is at all. So any talk like that always has an assumption about it. And the physical sciences and methodology. I'll just put method. In the scientific revolution, these 3 component elements. Method seemed to be universal and totally objective and ethically neutral. It was for the first time mathematized because the Greeks had no mathematics in their science. It was metaphysics and not mathematics. They had no instrument of quantification, no instrument of measurement, and motion. Now notice the little steps in the little notes all semester, just tiny ones because I just don't have time to give all those things. And this represents the essence of the scientific revolution. And in the macro world, it started out with the Earth's planets. Greek explanation, telescopic observation, the planets' orbital patterns are elliptic rather than circular. That seems so impractical. What could have been less practical for a women's meeting on Saturday to have someone discuss the difference between whether planets, their orbits are circular or whether they are not circular. And I could see Maudie and Bobby Jean and Jackie Joe from Murdoch and Guinea Ben wanting to know just what that had to do with Christian women meeting here. See, because they don't connect what it is to be a Christian with anything else that goes on in this world. Now, then we have to have 19th century gives us negative integers. I just put negative on. No, that's not the same thing, but I'll put that down. See, prior to the 19th century, over the developments here, no one ever had a concept of that. that classical mathematical notations at the 19th century level, only positive integers existed. How'd they know that? See, they made epistemological claims without epistemological justification. And soon as they tried it out, it opened up the field for microscopic physics and microscopic biology. See, they began creating not only telescopes, but microscopes to magnify what was beyond human perceivability. Well, the brain recognizes it, but the eyes can't see it. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our mind. We don't hear with our ears, we hear with our minds. That's why people can hear different things and see different things without necessarily different things being there. Now, we talked about that a little bit. Motion, but the motion was the planets. Now what? Planets, not planets. You see, now it's deeper and deeper into the structure of reality. In just how long? 300 years. And well, not in your lifetime or in mine, but we've gone from Einstein and quantum mechanics on the brink of another paradigm shift. See, if it took 200 years before Newton was challenged, and we've taken a half a century, see, it took 1,500 years to challenge the Greek. It took 200 years to challenge Newton. It's taken 50 years to challenge Planck, Heisenberg, Bohr, Einstein. Well, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and more complex. While people are getting more and more insecure and want to know why they'd come to church if you're talking about the universe. See, they're lost in a very large universe. Now, mathematics has changed. No one believes that the scientific method is absolute. See, it was assumed in the 18th century that these elements were universal. Now, the universality of science, we're ethically neutral. That means ethics has nothing to do with scientific capability. Well, you want to work on medical ethics a while? You want to work on business ethics in Forbes 500 mega corporations? You see, decisions when you play hardball have nothing to do with truth, nothing to do with morality. They have to do with brokering power. Decisions are made. Donald Trump makes decisions not by reading the Bible. He makes decisions by brokering power. Well, see, almost everybody that plays hardball, it's hard to play hardball if you don't do that. Or you have to two-pocket. You have to go to church out of one pocket and then go to the real world. No wonder there's so much crisis in the world. So trying to do that. Well, it's ethically neutral, which means ethics have nothing to do. This, if you can do something, you ought to do. Well, think of all the things science can do. The issues in your world, in mine, in ours, see, is not what can be done. Many things can be done, but I would propose as a Christian that they ought not be done. But capacity is clearly available. How does one decide? Does that mean that religion rides herd on science? Well, if you just take a 2,000-year track and see what the church has said to science, then you would be suspicious of listening to people who don't know what they're talking about, making judgments about something. See? But can do, ought. Now we're on the way to technology. And motion, now it's no longer motion of planets, but motion of things that cannot be seen. There are even computer blips that will be sent to the earth from a $1.5 billion tool. It's the largest payload lifted into space. It's about the universe. It's about creation. Who do I think ought to have been the most excited this morning? Christians. I doubt it. I doubt if a word, unless you say it, I doubt a word will be said about it. Well, we talked about that a little while. And the 5 faces of atheism, just rehearse that. How do we get atheism stemming from the developments of science The first development, we've said ad nauseum, is deism. God created the world, but then he has nothing to do with it. Then the next development in the Western world was atheism in all of its forms. Atheism, we don't even need God. What do you need God for? Well, we used to say we needed God for the creation of the universe. Well, now he's been displaced at that. Well, then they said, well, you need God for ethics. And now they say, well, why do you need him for ethics? See, after a while, God is just a functional instrument, and you don't need God for anything.
You play football, that's your mascot.
Is this not true? Is it not possible? Now, to be able to face this, the atheism, 5 faces, we'll put these down, just a brief word, and then go to technology. Now, the first one to develop was sociology. Fall semester, if you have interest in that, we'll look not only at social theory, but concrete material that must be faced by the church. When? 50 years ago. Sociology. Now, sociology came into existence in the context of the crisis of the French Revolution. Now, without crisis in society, you hear that little chart that I gave you? Science, normative science, anomic behavior, crisis. The same thing happened in society when the sociology came into existence. See, as long as society is running smoothly, you won't find a whole lot of people doing what? Proposing what? Well, new things. If things are stable, see, if families are stable and people are happy, that wouldn't be the environment to be laying on them something new, would it? All right, now, what crisis? Well, now, on the way, you develop. By 1848, there is a political revolution, an economic revolution in every country in Europe. And don't forget, it's Christian Europe. Don't forget that it is not Christian India. It is not Christian China. It is not Christian Africa. It is not Christian Asia. See, it's Christianity has dominated the West, and now it no longer does that. Now, Scotland, you tell them just briefly about your experience. Tell us.
Sat in class with an Indian medicine man last week, listened to his worldview on
Well, no, that's all right. The details, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
it was interesting. It was all animism and...
But the point is, at taxpayers' expense, universities can bring in everyone but a Christian to respond to that, because that would violate the First Amendment. Because since 1963, the Supreme Court reinterpreted the First Amendment and its 2 clauses on the basis of Paul Tillich's concept of religion as ultimate concern. So a Native American has ultimate concern. If that's what religion is, then he's got it, isn't it? But even at Northern University, conservative part of the world, like us, they'd be upset, said, hey, I want a Christian to address that. Said, no, we can't have religion in here. We see, it's all over. And you and I have done it. That's like Nietzsche's madman. He came down with a lit lantern at noon from the mountains and told the people in the marketplace that we killed God. You and I have killed him. A lit lantern at noon? Well, he didn't mean that there was a God and killed him, but culturally, God has nothing to do. See, God has nothing to do with the cosmos, and then by the 19th century, God's out of the culture, and the only place that's left is in your heart. See, so you get all lathered up, see your heart, but you can't keep your heart lathered up. You have a stroke. So when people think religion, oh, that's why I know it's God, I feel him all over. Well, maybe you're sitting on a bare 220 line or something. Now the next we talk just is about psychoanalysis, about Freud. Now, in the psychology classes and the counseling classes, let me just see, I'm not checking, but do you read Totem and Taboo and Moses and Monotheism? These are just classical tools. These are being read in advanced high school. So any person that graduates from a large high school who haven't read them should be called back for summer school before they're allowed to leave the playground. Now, what are they? These are the classical tools set forth a naturalistic theory of the origin of religion. They become the fountainhead for comparative religion. No, it has nothing to do with details. It has to do with theories being projected on the details. So psychoanalysis is not just psychology. Psychoanalysis is heritage. Its origin was avowed atheism. In fact, the culture, all of Freud's patients in Vienna were Catholic or Jews, which meant they were what? They were religious. Why does religion, and you start to, I don't like the term, but you talk about, does religion produce mental health? Well, see, what if religion produced pathology? Is it good? God only knows there's enough pathology in churches and schools and families that we don't need anymore. But see, if Christ creates it, then psychologically, scientifically, it's best. The healing process requires the removal. You see, if being religious produces neurosis and you want to be whole, then you have to get rid of this religious bunk. Well, that's what sociologists said. Hey, the church was the instrument of stabilizing society, but the church couldn't stabilize. The cathedrals are there, and the priests and the nuns were there, and the preachers were there, but the society was in chaos. See, the church is to create not chaos, but unity. Well, all you have to do is get C-, not F or anything like that, but C-. It doesn't take a Harvard graduate to figure this out. Psychoanalysis developed. And then Marx comes along with avowed economic theory. In fact, it is in Marx's manifesto that you have an avowed atheistic, naturalistic explanation for why men and women and people are alienated. Now, you used to call it sin before Kierkegaard and psychological and existential terminology. Why are we alienated? Well, at this juncture, 19th century political and economic theory said that men are alienated because the source of production, you know, the bourgeoisie, you know the things you've heard from your youth up about that. Now, if that's the case, then all the biblical talk about sin is what? Out. But see, if sin is out, so is the biblical doctrine of salvation out. You can't keep salvation in. You know, Jesus, atonement, and all this business. If the sin problem can be, if you can get people in better housing and better jobs and better tennis shoes and fix them up, then they certainly don't need Jesus. Does that make practical sense? It's just sermonic oversimplification. I don't mean to insult your intelligence. But sociology and its whole history. Now, I don't mean that every sociology teacher is consciously an atheist. I didn't say that. In fact, many sociology teachers I've had weren't even conscious of anything. No, it's correct. Well, there's also no possibility of that. Except your house is on fire and my grass needs mowing. That's descriptive. I waited on the neighbors. All I'm going to wait on them. Economics? No, we talked about that. But it's not just economics. We have classes here and people say, what do you got that for? Because if you don't know what happened in the 19th century, that Marx and the whole economic, socio-economic, political theory developed as a direct confrontation on the Christian meaning of sin. Well, when then sin will become psychologized, and sin will become interpreted out of existential categories, despair, angst, you know, this deep anxiety, and you just hear it every place, so you can't be unmindful of it. Now, I say sin has psychological factors or consequences. It has sociological consequences, has economic consequences, but it's not reducible, nor explainable, nor removable by these. See, I have no problem, never did have any problem to say sin has something to do with how people treat people economically or politically. That's not the same thing as saying you can remove sin and create a perfect society by science. See, the social science. That's why social physics was Comte's term. Social physics, because you do sociology just like you do physics. If that's true, then the Christian view of man's out. See, notice what we've lost in all this. The Christian view of God as creator. Christian view of man in the image of God. We still talk about it, but we're going to have to fight for paradigms, not just issue biblical statements about the Imago Dei over abortion. So almost no one would listen to that, and is listening to that. Now, We have to show that this can't possibly remove sin, this can't possibly remove sin, that can't possibly remove sin. Now, if there's any data in those parameters, it's nothing more or less than data anyplace else. We want all data in a Christian reading of reality. But there is no data that is uninterpreted data. Well, we could say that. Now, two more little things, then we'll start technology. And I didn't get to these, so I wanted to recover just a brief word. In Nietzsche's, moral atheism. Nietzsche, Christmas Day, 1900. Moral atheism, because Nietzsche, now it wasn't Nietzsche technically, it was Immanuel Kant. And I've given, well, you have available for you, and I've given several of you, the structural outline of Kant's ethics. Immanuel Kant is the first one in modern civilization to posit a moral theory completely separated from God in revelation. You say, well, that's philosophy and that's not my major. I didn't ask you if it was your major. It's in our society. See, most people think they can be as good as anybody without God and the church and the Bible, don't they, when you talk to them? Where do you think that came from? They went to school and learned it from Kant. Most people couldn't spell Kant, let alone read one sentence of it. But the ideas penetrate. People have ideas. They don't know where they came from. Do you find them as you talk to people? Well, I can be as good as anyone. I don't need this. They have a long list of things they don't need. And students, why would you think an 18, 19, 20-year-old would know all they know? What would they be doing at the university?